Petropavlovsk, an isolated port in the middle of Kamchatka, is under siege by British and French forces. Commander Vasily Stepanovich Savoyko, outgunned, understaffed, and under pressure of fire, led over 1,000 men to victory with the help of one frigate. And that frigate was known as Avrora, an important vessel that took part in the Crimean War. But this video will follow the exploit of the successor ship that inherited her name. We will be talking about the legendary battle cruiser of the Revolution. On May 23, 1897, first-rank cruiser Avrora was laid down. Commissioned on July 16, 1903, she would become a part of the Baltic Fleet. She would be taken out on a training mission right away, and would sail into different harbors where she would conduct artillery drills. At some point in time, Avrora would find herself in the port of Djibouti, where the crew found out that the Russo-Japanese War was raging in the Far East. Thus, sailors were called back to the Baltic, where they were assigned to the 2nd Russian Pacific Fleet, and would set sail on October. The main mission of the Navy was to break out the 1st Pacific Fleet that was blockaded in Port Arthur, and sail to Vladivostok. Now, I'm sorry that I have to interject into the video so early on, but I have to tell you that this expedition from the Baltic to the Sea of Japan is a great fucking laugh, and I advise you to check out the video from Potential History about this exact topic. But I'll quickly summarize the events. In the Dogger Bank, Russian ships misidentified British fishing boats as Japanese vessels and shot them, subsequently killing the fishermen. This resulted in a massive political crisis. The British government closed the Suez Canal to any navy under the Russian flag and would shadow the Baltic Fleet until they sailed past Cape Verde. After a long journey around Africa, they docked in Madagascar, where the crew would begin their training. Most of the crew didn't have prior training, with Avrora being an exception. After more mischief in the French colony, they finally set out again, and tensions stacked as high as the moon when they made it into hostile waters. The initial plan was to breach the enemy blockade and make it into Vladivostok, with the remaining 1st Pacific Fleet, which survived the siege of Port Arthur. Under the cover of dark, on a cold May evening, they tried to slip through the narrow straits of Tsushima, but fortune wasn't on the Russian side that night. They were discovered by a Japanese merchant vessel that relayed the location of the foreign forces. The Japanese swiftly responded by deploying the main armada with Admiral Togo at its helm. They would successfully intercept the Baltic Fleet and would deal a crippling blow which resulted in splintering of their forces. Luckily, Avrora was among the surviving ships that would reach the port of Manila uninterrupted. She wouldn't survive the bloody battle without a scratch. During the engagement, she took 21 direct hits, but they weren't severe enough to hinder her movement. During their time in Manila, the remnants of the Baltic Fleet found out some of their comrades weren't lucky enough to escape the wrath of the rising sun. Demoralized by this, they would blame it on the high-ranking officers that continued to oppress the sailors. The outraged buccaneers would mutiny until they ate good food, and not the bland rations that were given out. The Philippines is where Avrora's crew began to harbor revolutionary ideas, although it would not fully manifest until the future. On 15th of October 1905, the repaired but humbled navy would set sail to St. Petersburg. The long voyage would end on April 27, 1906. After a year, the new and stronger cruiser would be added to the training detachment of the Navy, setting sail once again in the Baltic on May of 1908. In the same year, Avrora and several other Russian ships would find themselves near the port of Messina, where a devastating earthquake took up to 75,000 lives on the low estimate. The Navy, with the help of the British and French, would try to save the Italian citizens that were still stuck under the rubble. The Messina earthquake is to this date the largest in Europe ever recorded. In addition, with the Allied bombing campaign in 1943, many historic buildings in Messina would be destroyed, thus earning the title of the city without memory. Avrora's tour of the European ports with the Baltic Fleet ended in 1911. Unluckily for the sailors, they had to depart once more right after they got back to the motherland. Avrora was set on a diplomatic mission from Russia to the Kingdom of Siam, where they would attend the coronation of the new king. The crew finally made it back to the motherland in 1912, and from 1st of September till 9th of May 1913, Avrora was held in the Baltic Fleet's reserve. With touring around the globe, the seeds that was planted in Manila had grown much stronger. Witnessing the good, bad, and ugly of the world, some of the men had grown fond of Karl Marx's ideas. In April of 1914, she would join another training voyage, one she was bound not to finish, as a new conflict was brewing in the West that threatened to consume the world. On July 17, 1914, Avrora had been assigned to the 2nd Brigade of active cruisers in the Baltic, with ships Россия, Goromboy, Bogotyr, Oleg, and her sister ship Diana. On July 21st, the brigade had gotten orders to prepare for war, as the Russian Tsar had decided to stand toe-to-toe with the German Kaiser. The main mission of the 2nd Brigade was to help out the army with artillery positions, and more importantly, to defend against any German incursion to the capital, patrolling the waters and always on the hunt. On August 12th, 2 German light cruisers and 3 mine-layer ships would try to break the blockade and wreak havoc behind the lines, but it would ultimately be futile. The Baltic Fleet was well prepared and would sink one of the light cruisers named Magdeburg. The Ivans would capture very important equipment, mainly the answer book for the encrypted German code. This kind of activity would carry on for the next several years, putting the crews under immense pressure. This, in turn, flared up anti-war sentiments in them. In April 1915, Aurora would patrol the waters next to the modern-day Finnish island of Åland, fearing that the Krauts had plans to take over the strategically important archipelago. On November 20th, 1915, she would dock in Helsingfors for additional upgrades to almost every equipment on board. Renovations took a year to complete. During this time, few of the crewmates would join the Bolsheviks, some even becoming party members of RSDRP right after its founding. However, the crew of the mighty cruiser would not just harbor Bolsheviks on board. Most of the men were Mensheviks and Narodists, with Decembrists, anarchists and Bolsheviks being a minority. But despite their ideologies, any sailor who would voice out the anti-war sentiments would be imprisoned. This only made it more apparent in the eyes of the public and the active military that the change is the only way out of this nightmarish situation. In 1916, Aurora would again join the fray to defend against the Central Powers' onslaught. This time, aerial bombings had become a norm, forcing the Navy to adapt. Aurora was no exception. She got anti-air artillery installed on her deck to fight off Imperial Germany's planes. Accumulated stress led to more disobedience and more buccaneers being sent to prison. On 23rd of February 1917, the built-up frustration popped and soldiers, starving citizens, sailors, pilots, and folks from all walks of life that were sick of the war would march en masse in Petrograd. This February revolution ended 8 days later, with the Tsar finally folding to the revolutionaries' demands and abolishing the monarchy. The cost of the treaty was paid with blood of 1,500 citizens. The new provisional government tried to win back public support after the declaration to continue the war, and once more the citizens of the new republic took to the streets to satisfy their demands. The newly formed government had gone against the will of the people and the Revolutionary Committee. They, in turn organized by the Petrograd Soviet, started preparing for a new revolution. An eternal revolution that will last the centuries and achieve utopia on earth. The RSTRP, spearheaded by Vladimir Lenin, would protest, demonstrate, and speak publicly against the Republic, attracting more men to the cause of Bolshevism. The battle-hardened crews of Avrora and the Baltic Fleet would be swayed by him as well. Preparations for the uprising took a long time, but it would all pay off in the end. On October 24th, Avrora's crew had gotten a message from the Bolsheviks. The Petrograd Soviet is under grave danger. Counter-revolutionaries with the help of the cadets have attacked the press quarters of Soldat and Rabochi. The ship is now on full alert. Wait until further orders. Any delay and confusion will be regarded as a betrayal of the revolution. Send 2 representatives to delegate with Smolny. This attack on Bolsheviks' newspapers would not be taken lightly, and the next day an armed insurrection would not only fight off the government's forces, but also take over key parts of the city. Avrora would sail into the river Neva and await orders. It didn't take long for the new orders to be relayed. Avrora was instructed to shoot blanks signaling the storming of the Winter Palace, the last government holdout in Petrograd. On the fateful day of October 25th, Aurora's thundering batteries resonated throughout the city of White Knights, followed by the battle cries of 200 Cossacks who'd stormed the palace. This marked the beginning of the bloodiest civil war on Russian soil.